Often, the public conversations around autism focus on children living on the spectrum and on support for families, important issues. But those children grow into adults, and there is still a huge need for support and for understanding. Sarah Kurchak was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at 27. Today, she's working to change how adults with autism are represented and how they're treated. And she's our guest in studio this morning. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, my very first question to you is this article that you wrote for The Guardian, which I love because it was such great insight into what it is like to live with autism as an adult. You start out by saying autistic people are not tragedies. So in the media, we've been taught to not say autistic people. What are your thoughts on that?
That's true. The idea being that they want to separate the disability from the person so that we say person with autism. However, I've noticed, I personally feel like you can't separate my autism from me. It's like saying I'm a person with blondness. It's just more natural to say autistic people and just embrace that it's a huge part of my life.
Which is why you use the term.
Yes.
All right. Can you explain for people who may not know what life is like, what day-to-day life is like for you?
I don't know what day-to-day life is like for a non-autistic person because this is all I know, but I will get up in the morning, usually tired because sleep is a huge issue for people with autism or autistic people. You see, even I get tripped up on it.
Is it lack of sleep? Why is it hard to sleep?
It's just disordered sleep. I didn't sleep through the night for the first 3.5 years of my life, and I'm still working on getting that up into double digits now. And then from then on, it's managing sensory issues, dealing with executive function disorder because I can't necessarily manage my day the way a neurotypical or non-autistic person would. And then trying to navigate social issues. I have a great network of family and friends. I love them dearly. I don't necessarily always have the energy to keep up my end of the deal as much as I'd like to.
What would your end of the deal be?
Just in terms of something as simple as knowing how to hold up a reciprocal conversation, to being able to be in a group in public and keep up the energy the whole time, even though I love and care people and I like hanging out with people, it just tends to take a lot out of me and drains a lot of energy.
And are you always aware of perhaps how other people might be viewing you? That double track is going.
Yes, it's like a constant awareness, and I'd like to think that over 36 years of studying it, I have sort of a good idea of what people's responses are, but I also have years of bullying, years of being told that I'm not normal or not likable. So there's also a constant panic of, is the feedback I'm getting actually real? Am I too much for someone? Am I being weird for someone? Am I doing something unacceptable that I don't even understand?
And do you rely then on other people to give you that feedback?
Yes, and of course in our society it's just way too polite, so they want to give you sort of subtle feedback, which is not necessarily a way my neurology responds to. I would need more than a hint.
A direct response?
Yes.
A direct and frank
yes.
answer.
And then when we give that back in return, we're, being cold or callous.
It must be very tricky in a culture like Canadian culture where it's all about subtlety. No one ever wants to directly say something.
Absolutely. I've spent years navigating just the celebrity gossip message boards because I figured that was the one place you could find unfiltered opinions about what people do. I think it ruined my life to a certain extent, but I also got a lot of feedback on what people actually want to see in other people.
Part of our discussion today is going to be what happens after you age out of high school.
Yes.
So, we've talked to the Premier on this program, we've talked to the head of Autism Canada about the supports that are there for parents, for families, and for kids with autism that are up until the end of high school.
Yes.
But once you age out of the system, more than one family has described it as a cliff, and everything just drops off. What is that like?
Absolutely. Well, I'm an example of someone who fell through the cracks. When I was going through school, they knew that I was different. They had no way of figuring out what it was. And by the time I started to figure out it was probably autism, there were no services publicly available for me to get tested. So I had to save up money, pay out of pocket to figure out what was going on with me. And the idea being, with everything we do have in place right now, probably produces a bunch of 18-year-olds who look like they have a certain grasp and will be able to navigate the world. But the work that goes into being that productive-looking 18-year-olds will be work that has to be kept up over a lifetime.
Interesting.
And as you get older and more tired, it's harder to keep up.
And let's talk about some of the challenges of, adulting. You
Yes.
have to find a place to live. You
Yes.
have to find and hold down a job.
Which only about 16% of us do.
Right, in this age category. So then what needs to be done? What do you need to see as adults in order to maintain support so that you can contribute?
It's That's a lot more than we're going to be able to cover in like one interview question, because we're so fond of saying, if you know one person, one autistic person, you know one autistic person. And any services that we're going to have for adults are going to need to be a spectrum of services, for lack of a better term. So we're going to need to see everything from one-on-one care for adults with higher needs to something as simple as not just awareness, but acceptance of what things look like. If an autistic adult can stim in public, do repetitive hand motions or something without necessarily being judged or even put in danger because those movements might look like a safety issue and then they might get targeted, that energy can be channeled into something more meaningful for them. So it's basically everything from like just accepting people as they are to having the funds to help them deal with their lives.
Great conversation this morning, Sarah. Thank you so much.